manufacturing services, accounting for over 50% of the recent GDP slide and may not rebound fully by the end of September 2020. Our focus today is the aviation industry, with international flights expected to resume by the end of this week. And I'm being joined by Godwin Ike. He is an aviation expert, and we shall be looking at issues around the revenue decline from the aviation sector. Hello, Mr. Ike.
Yes. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Ike. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly, but I'm wondering if you're hearing me.
Okay. Good day. So about $35 trillion is expected to have been lost from manufactured goods traveled by air. How much of that amount comes or was lost from Nigeria?
Oh, well, I keep mentioning this issue of figures emerging from Nigeria. Our figures are not yet, clearly, announced by the appropriate department, which is the, the people in charge of statistics. But the point remains, I always say to anyone that listens that aviation remains the fastest and the easiest way to move around goods and services. And for as long as the airplanes are on the ground, that it means that goods and services are lame and sitting there like sitting ducks. And we will just be busy losing money. The GDP will just be busy going all the way sliding down. That's what we will have. So I don't want to give you wrong figures, because those that is their responsibility to check these things and release figures on weekly basis are not doing what they should do.
Okay,
and so
can you
I don't
give
want
us
to make
a situation
an
of just Nigeria? How bad was the situation in Nigeria?
You mean in terms of the planes sitting on the ground?
Yes.
Oh, well, it simply crippled the economy, and everybody is feeling the pain. As a matter of fact, coronavirus, turned out to be, a leveler. It got to a point that it wasn't a question of who's big and who's small. It just leveled off at every level. People were having challenges. For instance, private schools got to a point that they couldn't pay salaries anymore. And in spite of, how big some of the schools are, for as long as children were not in school and parents were not paying school fees and, no inflow, of course, reserves will be exhausted, and you begin to find out that you can't pay your bills anymore. And the same way, if you take it all the way down to the lower cadre of the economy, people were virtually starving in this country. But I want to admit that the government did a little bit of what it was expected to do by sending palliatives to what was described as the poorest of the poor.
Okay.
And but that's an irony, because some of us who would not be described as poor were actually almost going hungry, because no inflows, and the outflow began to exceed reserves. So
yes,
it's been
Mr.
horrible.
I believe
horrible.
no one was left untouched by the pandemic. No one was left untouched by the pandemic.
No, that's why I describe it as a leveler.
Okay.
It touched everyone at every level.
All right, let's talk about the latest GDP figures released some days ago for the second quarter of 2020. It shows that the transport sector, which aviation is part of, was among the sectors with negative growth. What exactly is the aviation industry faced with? What's the situation? What are the issues?
Oh, yes. Before you understand why the negative growth was identified, you need to understand how the nature of airplanes. When airplanes sit on the ground, all they do is run beers. The only time they rake in money is when they are in the skies. You need to park a jumbo jet just for 24 hours, and after that, line technicians will begin to take care of those machines as the way you take care of newborn babies in a home. On daily basis, on weekly basis, on monthly basis, one check or the other will be done to maintain the airworthiness of the airplane. And all those checks are expensive. So as you sit on the ground, unlike your car, for instance, if you park your car in your home for 2 weeks and you don't, for as long as your battery is stay strong, you just jump into your car, crank your engine, and off you go. But not the airplane. You continue to keep it on daily basis, do one thing or the other to keep it airworthy. Otherwise, if you leave it just parked there, if you take it to the air, the likelihood is that it's going to bring you down and slaughter you.
Okay, you've talked about so much impact on
the aviation sector was busy spending money without inflow.
So I said you talked about so much impact on the industry. How soon do you think the industry will be able to recover now that the skies are open?
Wonderful. Recovery depends on the attitude of those who are managing the sector. At the moment, what the airlines should worry about is having passengers regain confidence. Number one, that they won't contract coronavirus in the airplane. They have to really look for money and begin to send out clear information about the nature of the air conditioning system, about the safety of the cabin, and convince the passengers that it's safe to fly. That's number one business they have to do. And then they have to also attract passengers by reducing fare and behaving as if they don't know what they are doing. But in reality, when you reduce the fare and make people fly, by the time one flies once, twice, thrice, and one realizes that one is actually safe, that it didn't contract the coronavirus, or anybody you know didn't contract coronavirus, confidence will begin to build, and then you will begin to see people flying more, because they will need to have more people flying, have the planes flying in full capacity in order to break even. Because it's not just enough to have, say, 50%, 40%, or 60% capacity traveling, for instance, from Abuja to Lagos. The cost of every flight is known. The cost of your fuel you consume is known. The cost of your crew is known. Your landing fee is known. Everything about moving from point A to point B is known and constant. Now, the only variable you have in the system is how much of the passengers do you have a full capacity to do that trip. If you have half capacity, that is to say, a plane of about, say, 200 passengers is now traveling from Abuja to Lagos with just 100 passengers.
All right, Mr.
That
Ike,
flight is likely not to break even.
Let me cut in. Just yesterday, the Bankers Committee agreed to put aside some financing for the aviation sector. What do you make of that? And do you see it making any impact on the industry?
They waited for too long. As a matter of fact, get it straight and right that barely 3 weeks into the pandemic, I appeared in most of the TV stations in this country, including radio stations. And I'm talking about you, the NTA, ITV, TVC, Armed Forces Radio. I continue to cancel the government to brace up and get ready to put together funds for the aviation sector. I counsel the government, please set up a committee that would, begin to talk to the various, airlines and find out their challenges. I mean, and I'm talking about financial challenges, get them ready to take to the skies as soon as the pandemic would allow. We were not proactive. If they had listened to my counsel, if somebody had done something towards that end, we would have long solved this situation we have on our hands before this, they started showing up. They waited for too long. That was not proactive at all. And we can't go on this way as a people and as a nation.
As it is said, it is better late than never, don't you think?
Sometimes when you're late, you will be trying to weep a dead horse.
All
How
right.
about that?
Thank you very much.
When the horse is dead, are you going to get it on his feet?
Thank you so much, Mr. Godwin Ike, for your thoughts with us on Business Express today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I hope we have a government that will begin to listen.
All right. Moving on. President Muhammadu Buhari has considered and given approval for 1-year deferment of the 35% import adjustment tax or levy imposed on fully built unit FBU electricity meters under the 2019 fiscal policy measures for the implementation of ECOWAS Common External Tariff CET 2017 to 2022. Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance, in a statement said the 35% levy was imposed on the recommendation of the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to encourage local production as well as protect investments in the local assembly of electricity meters. If it is approved, the 50% of the current demand for electricity meters will be considered for importation at the ECOWAS CET import duty rate of 10% zero levy to immediately bridge the gap between the demand for electricity meters and local supply. Crude oil prices rallied higher on Wednesday at Asia's trading session. This was triggered by American oil producers shutting down most of their oil production in the Gulf of Mexico ahead of a pending hurricane storm and high hopes on China-US trade talks. Let's take a look at how the commodities are trading across the globe. Stocks in Nigeria inched upward for the third straight day despite disappointing growth figures. The NSE All Share Index gained 0.15% to end the day at 25,330.1 points. Market capitalization closed at 13.214 trillion naira, with volume of trade standing at 180 million. Value of stocks at the end of the session is 1.355 billion naira in 3,411 deals. Banking stocks dominated activities led by Fidelity Bank, UBA, and Access Bank. Meanwhile, European stocks moved higher on Wednesday as Germany extended its coronavirus stimulus package and investors awaited a key speech by Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Bosede Abel takes it up from here.
Stock continues to fluctuate amid the coronavirus pandemic. Investors strive to be optimistic. European stocks traded slightly higher in early trading of Wednesday, 26 August, amid optimism about U.S.-China trade and ahead of a key speech by the U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman. Shares in mainland China led losses among Asia-Pacific's major markets in a mixed trading day regionally. The Shanghai Composite was down 1.3% and closed at 3,329.74. Hang Seng Index was little changed on the day at 25,491.79 and Nikkei lost 0.03%. U.S. stock futures were mixed early Wednesday after the S&P 500 closed at a new record high. Dow futures lost around 50 points. The S&P 500 futures contract stood just below the flat line, while Nasdaq 100 futures traded in positive territory. Africa's stocks were mostly positive, with Nairobi's all-share, Tunisia's Tunidex, and South Africa's GSE Composite posting gains, while Ghana's GSE Composite was marginally positive.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Business Express. Don't forget you can access this and all previous episodes on YouTube, and you can communicate with us on Twitter. The handle is at NTA News Now. The hashtag is BizX. Be sure to follow the set-down guidelines as we fight COVID-19. I am Moplang Dakok. Do join us again Thursday at 9 a.m.
In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and